Heroin was not something that had ever crossed my mind until I got this book for Christmas. I can still smell the nail polish and the hair mascara, Radiohead's OK Computer, and I got this book and I was obsessed. We all glamorize things we read in books because there's no visual. She is kind of an awful, obnoxious character, but I so related to her. Probably the most inaccurate factor of this book is the withdrawal. Describing withdrawal as being like flu is the most inaccurate book I have ever heard. The anxiety is crippling. Body is like physically spasming with restlessness. Like can't stop shivering and twitching and stretching. You feel like something is going to dislocate or break. Day 3 of no sleep, I find, is the point at which you really start to break. To be able to date all of that back to the age of 13 to a sentence in a book is very, very weird. So hello, you wonderful citizen of cyberspace, and welcome to a video about the Green Book that would single-handedly set me off on a path to heroin addiction when I was 13 years old. Having now walked that path and having, fixated on heroin from such a young age, and then eventually got to the age where I was old enough and I had enough kind of cunning and enough ideas to go, okay, I know how to acquire this stuff now, finally, after all these years. And then walking that path for many, 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 many years, I've been on methadone for 16 years now. My cravings are still dog shit. I am still fighting battles with my addiction team to try and get medication that's going to be better for that. And maybe some big progression. I don't want to jinx anything by saying too much. But anyway, obviously having walked all of that path and still kind of being on that path, I have so many thoughts on this book now compared to like reading it as a 13-year-old who'd never tried any sort of drug at that point, but who already had some slight fixations on drugs, strikingly, amusingly autistic, that what got me into heroin wasn't like peer pressure or bad influences. It was critically acclaimed literature purchased for me by my mother for Christmas. Like, how autistic is that? So I just thought it would be interesting to talk about this book a little bit, like the good, the bad, the ugly, the errors in the writing in terms of, having walked that path myself. And also just to say, and maybe this is a personal thing because of having walked the path that I've walked. Although this is like young adult fiction, it is aimed at young adults, teenagers. I would never buy a book that was about drugs for a kid of that age range. I don't think I was bought this book as some kind of like, this is, don't get into this is a bad idea to get into, this is an educational moment. I don't think that was in my mom's head when she bought me this book for Christmas. I think it was solely like, my mom is a huge book person, and whatever was critically acclaimed that year, I would generally get bought. So I read and had read to me a lot of really good books in my youth. So despite the fact, the first thing you see on this book is the walloping great syringe on the front, I don't think it was ever intended as a lesson in that, because honestly, I don't think it even crossed my mom's mind that drugs would ever be a part of my life, because we're very different people when it comes to that kind of stuff. That, like, my mom has never even tried a cigarette in her life. She doesn't really drink. If she ever breaks a bone and is given prescription painkillers, she hates them. Like, she gets dizzy, she gets nauseous, she hates that shit. So I don't, and it was completely shocking to her, not just me, but also, my siblings have not gone remotely to any of the extents that I have gone, but, weed is a part of most people's upbringing in the people that I know, and that startled my mom. I think that any of us would have any interest in any of that stuff at all. So I don't think this book was bought for me as some kind of like lesson. It was just, it's going to be a good book, you're going to enjoy it, and there was no thought to the drug content whatsoever. But for me, having experienced what I've experienced, I don't think it's a good idea to even tiptoe with putting that kind of idea in a young person's head, particularly in a book. I think if you want to teach a young person about drugs, I would show them the reality, and not some kind of hyper dramatic reality like the Intervention series. I don't know if that still runs, but you know, the Intervention series that was around in like the 2000s, 2010s, that was like so dramatic. And although it showed people at their worst and all of that, it was very dramatic. And I feel some teenagers could be attracted to the chaos and the drama and all of that. I would show them something like the Soft White Underbelly channel, which has its flaws, but it really does show the gritty, gruesome reality of people living broke and homeless and supporting themselves through schmeck's work, and, you know, walking in with abscesses and walking in just looking so worn down and walking in beaten up. And you can't glamorize that. Like, I defy anyone to watch the Soft White Underbelly channel and glamorize that. Whereas like a book, there's no visual. And unless you're reading something like, I don't know, like William S. Burroughs, where everything is so gruesome and so like grittily gruesome, and there's no getting away from how gruesome it is, your average book that doesn't go into like that much description, that although there's some scenes where, you know, someone's like poking around behind their knees for a vein because they can't find any because they're all collapsed, no one goes really into detail about it. It's just a little fleeting detail, and you can quite easily brush over that. And we all tend to, I think, see book characters as more attractive than maybe they really were, or maybe than they were intended by the author, unless someone is really described constantly as very uncool in a book. You tend to see them as being quite cool, I think, or certainly I do. Like if there's like a love interest in a book, you always turn them into like what your perfect person would look like. Things like that. We tend to glamorize stuff we read in books. So to get into the phrase in this book that was the firework, atom bomb, cataclysmic moment for me in my brain and my life path, I am going to have to give some spoilers, obviously, but I don't think it really matters if you want to read this book afterwards. Because it's not, like, plot-wise, it's not very surprising, and it's not really about it being like a shocking plot twisty book. It's not that. It's a teenage couple who run away from home, they get into drugs, and it's their love affair and their love affair with drugs, and it goes in a very predictable direction. So I don't think anything I'm going to say is like, oh, that happened, whoa, you've ruined it for me. I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, the sentence in the book that really fucked with my head was a bit where they've started doing heroin and they're still kind of fairly early on in their journey with it. The negative stuff hasn't really popped up for them yet. And one of the characters says that you could be sitting in a sewer on heroin and you would still feel like the happiest man on earth. And that was the sentence that for me was just this pow moment, because I thought, well, my life is a sewer. I am sitting in a sewer between the custody agreements I can't get away from, between school bullying and the fact that, you know, all my bullies are local to me. So even when it's not a school day, I can't go anywhere. I can't get out of my house because there are bullies everywhere. And I hate this town. I hate London just as much. The two places I'm shuttled between, that there was just no escape. There was no respite. There was nothing that made me happy. I had been fed so many lies, and I don't think the adults giving me these things knew they were lies, but it turns out these things are basically incorrect. But I was told, and being autistic, undiagnosed at that time, I took this very literally, that I was told, you have to go to school. If you don't go to school, your mum will go to jail. You have to obey the custody agreement that was arranged before you could even really speak or argue for yourself or say what you wanted. You have to obey these things or your mum will go to jail. And I took this so literally that I remember one day when I was probably about 5, I was hiding down the end of my grand's garden, thinking no one would find me and no one would be able to drag me off to somewhere I didn't want to go. And then I thought, oh my God, but if they can't find you, your mum will go to jail. And I thought it would be like that. Like I literally thought I would finally go back in the house and like they would have carted my mum off in like a dog pound wagon with bars on the gates, and I'd never see her again. You know, if you're a child, like your biggest fear in life is something happening to your mum. Particularly if it's your fault that happens. So, and I remember thinking, oh my God, but she's going to be taken away, and like just legging it back down the garden and being like, no, you can't hide. You can't escape any of these things that you don't want to be doing. Any of these people you don't want to be around, you can't escape it, or the worst thing in a child's life will happen to you. So this book was like, aha, I can still be sitting in my sewer that I am bound, shackled and obligated to sit in, and yet I won't feel like I'm sitting in a sewer. There will be this secret answer, because you'd still be at the places people were forcing you to go, but inside your mind, inside your soul, inside your body, inside your life experience, you would be shielded, you would be protected, you would be at a remove. No one would get in trouble, but you wouldn't have to feel it anymore. That was what I thought. And I think that there were other kind of messages in this book about that, because the two girls in this book end up supporting everyone's habit via sex work. So, and again, they talk about, yes, it's not really great, but if you do it high, well, you don't really feel it, you don't really experience it. It's, you just get on with it. And it's not that bad. So again, it was like, okay, great. So I can do all this stuff that I find so unbearable, and it won't be unbearable anymore. I'll be at a secret remove. And I just wanted to interject here to ensure that I don't perpetuate any of the very naive and clearly incorrect misassumptions that 13-year-old me had about drugs, that they would be my shield, that I would still be able to do these horrible, horrible things I hated doing, but I wouldn't feel them anymore. Because just in case anyone is desperate enough to think, like, is there something to this logic? Is it worth a try? I just wanted to give you some of the facts from, the flip side, because when it comes to this sentence about, oh, you could be sitting in a sewer on heroin, you'd be the happiest man alive, there are so many problems with this. Like, I took it to mean that heroin would be this incredibly sweepingly euphoric drug, to the point that when I finally tried heroin, I was actually really disappointed. I thought it was shit, because it wasn't this kind of euphoric thing. It was more just a comfortably numb body high. And even that isn't as good as it sounds, because like everyone around you is going to notice that you are half asleep all the time. You're not going to fly under the radar with this shit. And then B, your tolerance builds really fast. So in seemingly no time, you are not going to feel anything from it at all, bar the fact that it's fending off the horrors of withdrawal and allowing you to indulge in the injection ritual that you're so addicted to, but you barely feel a thing even from that initial rush. You're just slow and brain foggy and stupid feeling when you use. There's nothing good anymore. And then point C is that street heroin is so unreliable in strength, so you never know when it will be so weak it doesn't even stop your withdrawal, or it will be so strong that you can't function at all. And it's so full of cuts. So there's obviously there's the risk of overdose every time you use, even in the same batch, now that there's fentanyl and nitazines. Also, many of the cuts in it are going to make you feel like absolute crap, even if they don't make you die, like shakiness, dizziness, heart palpitations, gastric issues, sweating, overheating, headaches, brain fog, memory loss, like any symptom you can think of, it's potentially going to be in heroin, because dealers will chuck literally anything in there to bulk it out. They don't care about you. So no, it's not a reliable way of settling your emotions, because every batch will be differently fucked up. And that's even without touching on the legal, financial and withdrawal elements. I would say that prescription medications have actually been more useful than all my mad scientist crap. If stuff is going on in your life that's making it unbearable, you do need to tell someone and try and get it altered, because there is no cheat code for making unbearable situations happy that won't ultimately make the whole situation even worse. Because I've got a lot of screwy side effects now that I think are a combination of damaging my brain with so many drugs when I was younger, and also of being so heavily medicated with methadone now. And I will link a video about all of that shit below if you're interested. I think I would be in a very different place, and I think I would be a much freer, certainly healthier, more functional person if I hadn't have got this idea in my head so young and then pursued it with the kind of hyper focus that only an ADHD person has. So if you are neurodivergent like me, I would be particularly cautious of getting on this train, because we are going to, I think, find it harder than anyone to get back off that train. Just like the book, it goes in a very predictable direction. But anyway, back to the video. And that really was the big allure for me. And from that moment onwards, I had this crazy weird fixation on heroin. And as I say, I already had this slight fixation on drugs from a very young age. And I don't even know where it came from, because I remember at the age of somewhere between 5 and 7 being at my dad's house and a packet of free Rizzlers coming through the door. And he didn't smoke, no one smoked. We just had these Rizzlers, and they were sitting on the table while he was making breakfast. And I was kind of looking at them, and on the Rizzler packets in those days, it said hemp, extra long for like an extra good high or something. And I was like, hemp. I feel like that's something to do with drugs. And it said extra long for an extra potent high or something. So I was like, this is made of hemp. This is drugs. So while my dad wasn't looking, I took one of the Rizzlers out and I screwed it up and I put it in my pocket. And that night I took the Rizzler out of my pocket and I ate it. I was really convinced, lying in the dark of my bedroom at my dad's place, I was convinced that this is going to get me high. And I still remember lying there, and I'm someone who gets a lot of visual snow in the dark, so that like darkness is not black to me, it's like very sparkly. So I was looking at the sparkles that are always on my vision, and I was thinking like, am I starting to see stuff? Am I starting to trip out? And I remember thinking something that was kind of wise for the age I was, that was like, if you have to wonder whether you're high, you're not high. So I already had this weird thing in me for, I guess, just escapism, really. I guess because of autism and ADHD. And actually, while I was flicking through this book the other day, just looking into the beginning of it, I found a quote that I was like, my God, maybe this explains why I connected so hard with one of the protagonists in this book. Because the female protagonist, Gemma, there's a quote in the beginning saying Gemma was the most bored person she knew. Sitting in class, sometimes she felt dizzy with it, that she'd pop or faint or something if it didn't stop. She felt she'd do anything just to have a life. And I'm like, I think Gemma was a bit ADHD too, because for me, like I say, it wasn't boredom, but it was this sensation of, I need something different from this. I need something to fill this void and this, let me out of here kind of thing. And because I really did like hugely relate to Gemma. And she's kind of an awful character, to be honest, but maybe just because of her youth. And she does develop and grow quite, maybe not rapidly, but by the end of the book, she is a lot more mature from what she's gone through. And by the end of the book, she's described as, even though she's only, I think, 15, 16 at the end of the book, she's had a lot of consequences from the drugs and from everything. And her life's kind of gone full circle, but she's described as being like an 80-year-old woman. Like it's like sitting, listening to an 80-year-old woman telling her story. Like that's how haggard she looks and how much shit she's been through since she was 14. Between the ages of 14 and 16, she's been through so much. So she does mature and develop, but in the beginning she is kind of an awful, obnoxious character, but I so related to her in the ways that, her family life wasn't like bad, because her boyfriend Tar is the one who really kind of instigates the plot of the book, in that he's got abusive, like physically abusive parents, and he's trying to get away from them, and he wants to run away from home. And Gemma, she's got a pretty standard, just argues with her parents a lot. She's bored. She doesn't like it there. She's in a very dull little town and she wants to get out, but there's nothing terrible going on in her life. But she runs away eventually too, to be with Tar, even though she doesn't really love him. So she's kind of a user. She kind of uses people to get what she wants. Like when she runs away, she's got £100 on her, which would have been a lot of money in the 80s when this book is set, that she's stolen from her dad's credit card. And when she gets to Bristol, where they run away to, she doesn't tell anyone she's got this money. She's living with like this squat couple that like they're in a squat and they're stealing food and they're making do with some people's dole money and all of that. And she's got like £100, which I how much would that have been in the 80s? I don't know, probably close to 800, 900 pounds that she's got like in her pocket, and she doesn't tell anyone. And then one day she goes out and she just blows all of it on a makeover. She gets like her hair dyed punky colors. She gets like all this makeup so she can look really punky. She gets all this like amazing punk clothing. And she's like, I know, like £100 punk is like not how you're supposed to do punk. You're supposed to do it with like, 50p and fish it out of a bin and all of that. But fuck it kind of thing. And obviously she gets back to the house and the squat couple can see how much money she has just blown on bullshit. And they've been putting her up, they've been feeding her, they're not impressed. So Gemma's kind of an awful character. Like she's kind of shallow, she's kind of a user. She's very spontaneous. She's very much out for herself. All she really wants in life is to have a good time at any cost to herself or to anyone else. So I could see in this book, oh yeah, there's things she does that are not good, but I did really relate to her in a lot of ways in terms of, yeah, I hate the town I'm in. It's so boring. I would do anything to get out of here. And I think this is not that unusual for teenagers, but to be a bit of a user, like, because I feel like I was a bit of a user of people when I was a teenager, that if there was someone who had an interest in me, particularly a guy, even if I didn't have a huge interest in that guy, I would think to myself, well, what does this guy give me? What can I get via this guy? Which is not very nice. That's not very nice. Although it could be said that a lot of guys are thinking that about you, really, aren't they? When you're both that age, particularly, it is about, I want to be cooler. I want to get notches on my bedpost. I want to lose my virginity. I just want to get laid. Don't particularly like this girl. Don't particularly love this girl, but I'll say whatever I want to make it happen, kind of thing. So I think a lot of young people do have this user mentality for a while, and I think it comes from the fact that in childhood you have no freedom and you have nothing that is under your own control. You don't hold the purse strings, you don't have your own transport, you can't go places by yourself, everything is controlled by other people. So of course you develop this manipulative user mentality, which is always like, okay, how can I get what I want from this person or via this person, or what can this person bring me? You have to kind of be out for yourself, and you have to kind of manipulate people in a way to get what you want. And it's only when you've matured and been an adult for a while and you've got your own money, your own transport, all of that you gain independence and you stop using people for what they can give you, because hopefully you can give yourself those things and you can actually develop relationships on an even footing. So I feel like a lot of young people would relate to Gemma. And another thing is when she first meets the other girl in the book who's called Lily, and Lily is described as the magic girl, that Gemma first sees her at this party and she is immediately just hypnotized by Lily. She's like, not in a sexual way, as far as we know Gemma is straight, but Lily is there in what Gemma first thinks is just like a string vest dress, like it's just clothes. And then her eyes go pop and she realizes that Lily is butt naked underneath this string vest dress that she's dancing around in. And it's like such a ballsy out there move. Gemma is just fixated on this girl who is just dancing, and all eyes are on Lily. And Gemma is immediately like, I want to be this girl. I want to be close to this girl. This girl is the magic girl and I want to be her. And I think that is a very quintessential teenage experience. I will link the story time below, out of my book Millennium Gothic, about my experience with the girl who was called Taryn, who I had that experience with, of just, God, this girl like is the most charismatic person I've ever met in my life. Everything she does is magic. Everything she does is so cool. Everyone is fixated on her. Like, what is the special quality that this girl has that is so amazing? And I think as you get older, it's rarer to be so bewitched by people, but you still, admittedly, it's usually in the realm of celebrity that you meet people, or encounter people who you're like, damn, this person is incredibly cool, and you get fixated on them. But when you're a teenager, the first time someone like that, someone who's just got this innate charisma, crosses your path, you are absolutely blown away by them. And I can understand why Gemma kind of follows Lily anywhere, including into heroin addiction and Schmeck's work and all the rest of it, because it is like an atom bomb going off when you first encounter someone who is in real life like that charismatic. And happily for Gemma, or maybe unhappily considering where things go, Lily seems equally taken with her. When they get talking, they just click and they bond, and they're like soul sisters from the get-go. And unfortunately, Lily has a lot of very dangerous beliefs. She's I think a little bit older than Gemma at this point, only by about a year or two, but that's quite a big difference when you're 14, 15. And Lily has been on the streets since she was about 12. So she's been like a baby hooker doing all of this stuff for like 3 years, which is like a long time for anyone, let alone for a child. But she has found ways to make her own life feel not like the gritty, miserable awfulness that it is. Kind of glorified everything she does. You could be eating dirt and it would still be magical because it's you that's doing it, and everything you do is magical, and you've got to see yourself and see the world in that way. And this is kind of Lily's stance on everything, that just be in love with yourself and be in love with it. She's kind of got this quite uplifting way about her, but unfortunately she applies this very uplifting, almost like self-care-y attitude to very negative things, that when it comes to the Schmeck's work, she sees it as like there's this whole justification of like, which to my mind at the time of reading this, I was like, that's a pretty good justification. And you forget that it's children though who are doing this and are justifying this and are going through this. And but the justification that Lily has for Schmeck's work is, hey, it's just manual labor, isn't it? Think about all the manual laborers, all the bricklayers, all the miners who are absolutely breaking their backs and using their bodies and breaking their bodies for their work. And we're doing the same thing as Schmeck's workers. They're doing the same thing, and they're getting paid way more. And they're just lying on their back to do it. So isn't that superior? Isn't that better? And that was another bit of kind of slightly dangerous logic that kind of lodged in my mind at that age. Because when I was, I think, God, maybe even just 19, somewhere between 19 and 21, I did sign up to an escort agency, because I grew up with this book telling me that it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It'll be fine. It won't traumatize you in any way. It's no big deal. It's just manual labor and you get paid better. I never actually went out on any assignments though, but I will say it wasn't the Schmecks that intimidated me. It was the idea of all the socializing and the conversing and all of that beforehand, since it would have been escorting, it would have been going out on like a social thing before the Schmeck's work started. It was that, and it was the uncertainty, and that I wouldn't, I'd have to like haggle prices and I wouldn't know how much they would expect from me. It was the uncertainty and the talking that freaks me out, not the Schmeck stuff. So I think it's great that these days, particularly on TikTok, there are a lot of older SWs talking about the toll it takes on you, even if what you're doing is not like person-on-person Schmeck's work, even if it's OnlyFans and Scrippers too, talking about the interactions you're having every day, whether that's over email, whether that's in person, the interactions you are having every day grind you down, let alone if you're literally, doing, hooking and all of that. It's going to take a big toll on you, even if you're someone who is not already traumatized, and if you're someone who doesn't have body image issues, even if you're old enough to get away with it, it's going to take a toll on you. So to be doing that as a literal child is quite disturbing. And I do feel for a young adult novel, I don't know that this was described in a very wise way, because sure, if you're an adult, you're going to read this and you're going to think, fuck me, this is a child. Like, this is disturbing that she's so casual about it. This is disturbing. When you're a teenager, you don't think that. You just read it and you go, yeah, she's got some bloody good justifications. Yeah. All right, fair enough. And she similarly applies a lot of her justifications to theft as well, to like liberate the food, steal the food, as you know, the corporations are evil, and you know, just take it, it's yours, and you're magic, and everything you do is magic. And if you believe that you can get away with something enough, you'll get away. I say this actually. I do have a family member who kind of brought me up with not about theft, just about slight mischief. That yeah, if you do something with enough confidence, you will generally get away with it. And yeah, so Lily has a lot of very dangerous beliefs, and she has this big art book that they've stolen. They've gone on this big spree of theft, and they've stolen this gorgeous big art book, and she uses it like tarot cards, and every day she'll open it to a picture and she'll tell everyone what it prophesies, because she's kind of got this witchy way about her that she kind of believes she's a bit magical and a bit of a witch. But every day the card, the kind of tarot card art book, it's basically telling them to go do heroin. This is what Lily always reads into the book. So yeah, ultimately Lily is a very, very dangerous character, probably the most dangerous character of all of them. She is kind of the ringleader. Her boyfriend is fairly passive and will just let her do everything that she wants to do, like tries to protect her but isn't very good at it, and can't protect her from herself because she is so good at justifications, and she is so good at verbalizing and justifying anything she wants to justify. She's an incredibly dangerous character. And in a way, in later life, I kind of relate to her a little bit on that front, in that, you know, being a hyperverbal autistic, I similarly have this very awful ability to justify fucking anything to myself and even to other people, and to brainwash other people without meaning to, because I never shut up, and words are my thing. You know, if you've seen any of my videos about, you know, drug use when I was younger, you know, injection roulette and injecting rotten blood clots and things, because I would find ways to justify this will be safe and this will be okay and this will be fine. And it's very dangerous being so hyperverbal and being kind of good at words and fairly intelligent. It can get you things you want, and it can get you things you need, and it can get your friends things that they need. Like, you know, I've used this for good too. You know, I've written letters to friends' doctors when they've not been listened to, and sometimes I've gotten a victory out of that, and sometimes they have been listened to just from me arguing in a letter. And it's a very two-sided thing, being hyperverbal and fairly intelligent like Lily in the book, that you can do a lot of good, but you can also fuck yourself and the people around you up massively, because you can justify anything. One of the major downsides about this book and about the way it's written is difficult, because I don't feel that moral tales should be rammed down teenagers and young people's throats. I don't feel that every book you read should have to be some sort of fucking moral bullshit. But I think when you're talking about such dangerous subject matter, I think, and you're aiming it at people who are not old enough to necessarily go, yeah, but you don't fucking want to touch that. No matter how fun this sounds, think about the reality. You're talking to very young, impressionable people. And this is a lesson that I have had to learn myself, you know, doing this and talking about this kind of shit myself, and writing about this kind of shit myself. Some of my audience is younger, and I have had to learn this lesson of trying to balance things out and trying to sometimes backpedal, honestly, and go, look, yeah, but here is the fucking downside, because I didn't realize that I need to heavily give you the downside because you're young and you're not going to work that out for yourself. And also, I think also, this is a tangent, but being grey asexual, I don't see the world in the same way that other people do. So the fact that one of my books, Millennium Gothic, I never wrote it intending to write a love story, but it kind of became a love story. That just was the way it went. It ended up focusing on that more than a lot. And I did not realize the extent to which love stories are latched onto by people, particularly young people, because I grey asexual, I don't idolize other people, I don't obsess about love stuff, doesn't cross my mind a whole lot. So I didn't realize the degree to which people would latch on to certain elements of that book. There's a smidge of drug use in that book too. And I had felt, well, this will get balanced out because I will tell the later tales, and the later tales get darker and darker and more fucked up. And hopefully that balances out to a degree. But I did get, one DM that did make me think I heavily need to backpedal and give the downside specifically to Molly, because that I hadn't, because honestly I hadn't even recognized the downsides and the dark sides of it in my own life until recently. I hadn't realized how directly it had impacted me and how much in the long term it had impacted me negatively. And I'll link that video down below too if you're interested in any way, because and I don't know how old and how far into his career Melvin Burgess was when he wrote this book, and how many lessons and life lessons he'd had about if you're talking to young people, you need to be wearing at least one moral shoe. It is tough because the obligatory moral admin, it can feel patronizing and it can feel grating. You don't know if people are going to listen to you. It can feel sanctimonious, and you can get accused of being sanctimonious and pompous and all the rest of it. But it needs doing. Unfortunately, it does. And I don't think there is enough of that in junk. The main characters, I feel like, even just statistically, even without the morals and all of that, statistically, one of the main characters should have died. And that I feel like would have been brutally shaking enough, because, young people do feel so immortal and so invincible and invulnerable to all harm. I feel like one of the main characters should have died. The other thing, I think, probably the most inaccurate factor of this book when it comes to the drug use is the withdrawal element. When it comes to heroin and its reputation and all of that, I think that the main reason people shy away from it, and that it has this reputation as if you've got any brains at all, you don't fucking touch this shit, is the withdrawal factor. Because it's not going to be something you can just piss about with on the weekend and walk away from scot-free. It's gonna fuck you up hardcore, and then you're not going to be able to walk away, and you're going to be shackled, and going to be supporting yourself with sex work and all the rest of it, is the withdrawal element. And therefore, this was the author's big weapon in terms of saying, yeah, okay, this is the fun side that the characters were having, and this was the love affair that you wanted to write the book about, but here's the shitty bit that you don't pun not intended, but pun quite accurate, shitty withdrawal diarrhea. This was your big weapon and you didn't use it, because the withdrawal is not the way withdrawal is described in this book. I have to assume Melvin Burgess never personally dabbled in heroin, and if he did, it was only to a very, 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 very light degree, or he's one of those weird people who just has this constitution that breezes through withdrawal, because you do get some people who just seem to walk through withdrawal and just get on with it, but usually that comes from years of just biting down and practice and getting on with it. And I get the feeling he never experienced it, because it's basically, they talk about feeling a bit fluey, or it's like the worst flu you've ever had, and the worst element for them is the cravings, that they know, or you feel like you've got the worst flu you've ever had, and you could take it away, at a moment's notice if you had dope and you don't, and that's like the cravings. And as a 13-year-old, I couldn't really conceptualize that, but more than that, describing withdrawal as being like flu is the most inaccurate bullshit I have ever heard, because it's, in my experience, the physical effects are secondary to the anxiety and the restlessness. Like, the anxiety is crippling, paralyzing, horrendous, to the degree that it was many years actually of having been addicted to opiates before I even ever experienced really the physical sides of withdrawal, because the anxiety would hit me so much faster than anything else, and I would find it so unbearable that I would do anything to make it stop. I put myself in hospital for a week, fucking up my liver, trying to get rid of that anxiety with over-the-counter codeine pills, which I did not extract in the right way and fried my liver. And that was horrible experience, absolutely ghastly. Don't recommend it. And it's only now that my anxiety is medicated that I am able to deal with any level of withdrawal, because I can mute the anxiety. But even with a stack load of benzos and other medications to mute the anxiety, the restlessness is the most ungodly thing. That you've got restless leg syndrome to the nth degree, but also your body is like physically spasming with restlessness. Like, you can't stop yawning, and it's this spasmy yawn that feels like your jaw is going to dislocate. You can't stop shivering and twitching and stretching, and it feels, your body goes into these spasms that you feel like something is going to dislocate or break, or you're going to get stuck in some fucked up position. You're going to do your back in, like it's and you can't control this shit, and it's horrible. That's even before you start really shitting your guts out and puking and all the rest of it. It's not described in, and the sleep deprivation. Oh my God, because you've got this restlessness, this anxiety, you think you're going to be sleeping at any point while you're withdrawing. No, you're not. No, you are not. And you can be quite gung ho about the physical effects. You put on a good few hoodies, and so you can block out some of the ungodly bone deep chills, and you take some muscle relaxants so that you stop twitching and spasming so much, and you mute the anxiety, and you can be pretty gung ho about it from there on out, and you can rock with that for about 3 days of no sleep. Day 3 of no sleep, I find, is the point at which you really start to break, and your emotions just go crazy. Everything is the worst thing in the world. Everything is unsurvivable. You feel your skin is already hypersensitized and already feels disgusting, and the sleep deprivation heightens that even more. Your teeth and your gums feel like dried out and disgusting, and your resolve just shatters, and and if you're talking about something long acting like methadone, all of this is on a way slower burn. So it's kind of worse, because if it's something short acting you're on, like heroin, you plummet into the shittiness quite quickly, which I actually find easier than the slow burn of methadone, because that restless stage where you're not distracted by feeling physically crappy, you're just fucking, you can't settle to anything, and the anxiety and the just, fuck this, man, that bit goes on for ages before you're distracted by feeling crappy, because I actually find it easier once I feel physically crappy than when it's all the mental stuff. So the withdrawal, calling it, it's like having the flu. No, just did not use the weapon that was really there, because you wouldn't have to pound the morals home in any way describing the withdrawal. You just go a bit William S. Burroughs and just describe the gruesomeness of it. And I think, had I read about all of that bit, it may have balanced my opinion a little bit more, and it may have made me just hesitate just a smidgen on this, like, I found the solution to my life kind of thing. Because I think what he intends to be the big moral lesson, and the big, like, this is the scary bit, this is the bad bit, this is, you know, all of that. What I think he intended that to be was the baby, is that both girls inadvertently get pregnant, both girls have their babies, and one of them, you know, remains on junk, remains an SW, and is really just not bringing up this baby in any remotely okay way. But I don't think that really works as like a moral consequence, or an educational consequence when you're writing to teenagers. Because, I mean, certainly, maybe it's just the fact that, you know, I'm autistic and I've never had any interest in having babies, ever, really. So for me, it was like, I just didn't really have empathy for the situation, because I just thought, well, this would never happen to me, because I would just have an abortion, and I would never think twice, and that would be that, you know. So I don't know how many teenagers really can relate to, like, the protectiveness that you're supposed to feel towards this baby. I think it's a lot more brutal in Trainspotting. Like, I have read Trainspotting, I've read the book, but it's been a long time since I read it, so I can't remember how brutal it is in the book. But certainly in the movie, I think because it's visual and you can't ignore what's visually in front of you, I think that baby situation in Trainspotting in the movie is very harrowing, and is very like, oh, that makes you hesitate, you know. And I saw Trainspotting at a very young age too, so I was in a similar state of maturity, but the accidental nature of the baby is somehow more pronounced in the Trainspotting movie than it is in Junk. That in Junk, when Lily gets pregnant, the first girl to get pregnant, she decides she wants to keep the baby, and they try and get clean. They fail miserably, and then she just rolls on having the baby and using, and the birth of the baby is not described. It just turns up and it's there, and so there's no point really at which you do bond with this baby, because you never, you know, it's not described in any way that would make you bond to it. It's just simply like, it's there's a baby, and everyone's ignoring it, and everyone's getting high. And whereas in Trainspotting, you see the baby and you see it being around, and you realize probably no one intended to have this baby, probably an abortion was intended, but their lifestyle is so chaotic that things just rolled on, and time rolled on, and maybe she didn't even notice that she was pregnant, because heroin tends to stop your periods, and the baby happened, and then there was a baby, and oh shit, no one knows how to care for it, and now, oh dear, and it's all so in your face, and so glaring, and so gruesome, and so haunting. It is a much better plot device in Trainspotting, the baby, than it is in Junk. The ultimate ending for the two protagonists, whatever lessons you were supposed to have learned, and whatever journey you were supposed to have gone on with the characters and matured at their side, I had not when I read it as a young person. Gemma, like say, her life goes full circle, and this boring little seaside town, and the parents she doesn't get on with, everything she ran away from. When she lands pregnant, she's like, I'm not, everything I've seen with Lily and that baby, I'm not doing that. So she, you know, finally picks up the phone to her parents and goes back home. So, you know, she's wound up right back in this shithole town that she never wanted to be in, with the parents she doesn't get on with, and a baby to boot, and all of her youth is lost to drugs and schmeck's work, and she's probably just got to go back to school and do her education again, because, you know, she didn't get that. And that's, you know, that's all pretty heavy and pretty miserable. But for me, when I read it at the age of 13, I didn't see that as like a life lesson. I just saw it as, well, I'd choose different. You know, I just saw it as, well, if I end up in that situation, like that, I'd have an abortion, and I'd probably just keep rolling with the chaos until I died. You know, fuck it. That was all I thought at the time, I just thought, God, there's no way I would go back to everything I hated. So like I say, the journey that you were supposed to take alongside the characters, I had not taken. It was not written in a way, you know, as critically acclaimed as it is, you know, winner of the Guardian Fiction Award and the Carnegie Medal, Evening Standard, the Times, Guardian on the back, talking about how wonderful it is. And it is a good book, but it doesn't, I don't think it's written in a way that the audience it's intended for are going to pick up on anything good. And I have to say, as someone who, you know, has reread this book in recent years, you know, with the life experience and all of that now, can see more, and I can empathize more with like certain bits that, my God, that would be awful. I like it as a book, but I do still feel it's lacking. I feel that the depth should have been there and isn't there. Funny because, you know, the book starts with an author's note that says, you know, it's set in the early and middle 80s when I myself was living in Bristol. All the major events have happened, are happening, and will no doubt continue to happen. I saw many of them myself and heard about many more. And he talks about the people here. Some are pure invention, some are seeded from real people and then fictionalized. One person is a proper portrait of the nicest and strangest person he'd ever met, who had passed away. This book isn't fact, it isn't even faction, but it's all true, every word. So he, you know, he had been around a lot of the situations that were going on, and yet he made the strange decision to write about all these gritty, gruesome things and yet make it a teenage love story without thinking teenagers are going to latch on to this love story and they're going to latch on to the situation of the love story, and I need to put some heavy counterweights in there because people are going to get very bad ideas otherwise. In those days, there wasn't really an internet. So you know, getting your reviews and all of that, you'd be getting reviews from professional bodies. So adults at newspaper companies would give you reviews on how good your writing was and how well you described things. You weren't getting the kind of direct fucking feedback that you get in the era of the internet. You weren't getting DMs from literal teenagers who had read your book and had gone, hey, let's try this, and then had got in a mess, and you're thinking, fuck, am I personally responsible for this? I've got to backpedal hard. I've got to put in the counterweights. I've got to give them the counterweights. Now I've got to publish something that counterweights what I have said and that I didn't fucking realize was stupid. That visceral experience of being directly DMable by the kids reading your stuff and getting the wrong end of the stick, like that I guess wasn't there in the 90s. So of course people were going to write and put things out that were maybe ill-advised. It does make me wonder, like, how, you know, how does he feel about this book now, all these years later, and probably having received some of that feedback back at this point. I still think it's a good book. I still like it. I still like reading it. I still feel nostalgic about it. It does hold so many bittersweet memories for me. I still vividly remember the Christmas I got it. Got purple hair mascara, so I was there like painting my hair purple, listening to OK Computer, and I was obsessed with this book. The pure autism of having an idea like that and locking onto it so hard that you spend, you know, the whole rest of your teenage years obsessed, fixated. And even once you're in your 20s and should know better, you don't. You still are fixated on this idea, and you go to some crazy extremes to get everything you need and to try this, and then you're fucking 40 and you're still embroiled in, you know, in methadone, in battles with drug workers and in cravings and all of that shit, you know. And to be able to date all of that back to the age of 13 to a sentence in a book is very, very weird. I will leave info on my books in the drop downs. I do have a book about heroin addiction and battles with drug workers, and a lot of it is ripped from events in my own life and events in my own past, and it's quite an easy read because it's just a series of arguments with, you know, the people around you when you're an addict. Your friends who semi-get it, but their patience is wearing thin. Your family who are exasperated and who do the things that they feel are morally right, but that actually back you into awful corners and fuck you up even worse. You know, conversations with you know, the drug workers and all of this. It's a series of arguments. And it's called Exit Note. It's available on Amazon. It's called Exit Note because I wrote it intending it to be my exit note. Battles with the drug workers were seeming so hopeless that I was like, well, okay, that's the end of the road then, isn't it, for me in life. I intended to secretly publish this book, hop off the planet, so to speak, and leave it as my public goodbye was the purpose of Exit Note. And instead, because I'm so anally retentive about my writing, I spent 2 to 3 years polishing it, you know, obsessively. And then things were rolling on with the drug workers, and it was like, okay, there's a tiny bit of hope on the horizon now, so I'm maybe not going to hop off the planet. But now I've got this book, and I love it, and I feel like it needs fucking saying. So I published it. Which is terrifying, obviously, when you weren't ever intending to be alive to hear the critique on that book and to hear the reception to that book, and you fucking put it out there anyway. It's a terrifying, crazy thing to do. But I am very proud of it. I do think it says a lot of things that need saying. People at my drug worker place have read it, seem to like it. I believe the quote was, I think everyone should read this. So that was really fucking sweet. I think my drug worker still hasn't read it, but there we go. That doesn't surprise me. And to be fair, he has read enough of my furious letters and furious WhatsApp diatribes and all the rest of it. Maybe the poor guy, the last thing he fucking needs is a whole book. But there we go. Anyway, if you're someone who also has been through addictions and all of that, can you pinpoint like the moment that the idea entered your head? Was it the classic peer pressure and fell in with a bad crowd and all of that, or was it external but from a weird place like this? You know, tell me things. Waffle over. Thank you for listening. I will leave all of that info down below. Tell me your story and where it all started. I'm going away now. Thank you for listening. Okay, bye bye.